mai kako, makamaka mai kalahi ki a kalakau. Velina nui me ke aloha. Mana nui no ke a koko ana no kako no ka pono o ka lahui, no ka pono o ka aina, a no ka pono o ka vai no hoi. Ea he olelo no iao e kalele ana no ke ko'iko'i o ka vai. Mohala I ka vai I ka maka o nā pua. The olelo no iao I just shared is translated as unfolded by the water or the faces of the flowers. Flowers thrive where there is water, as thriving people are found where the living conditions are good. Aloha everyone, and welcome to today's July 24th, 2023 regular board meeting of the Honolulu Board of Water Supply. Before beginning today's meeting, I'd like to state that our board is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and an affordable supply of water now and into the future. At this time, we'd like to share a brief recording with reminders on public participation, as well as virtual meeting regulations for the board members as required by law.
For this meeting under HRS Section 92-7.5 are accessible at boardofwatersupply.com/board meetings. The public may attend this meeting in person at the BWS Public Service Building, located at 630 South Beretania Street. The public may also view a live stream of today's meeting on our website at boardofwatersupply.com/live. We have been accepting written or oral testimony for today's meeting. Instructions and an online submittal form are available at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. The deadline to submit advanced written testimony has passed. Testimony received by noon today have been distributed to the board members. We will continue to accept written testimony today through our online form. Oral testimony in person or remotely will be accepted during today's meeting. To facilitate as much in-person and remote testimony as reasonably possible during the time allotted, pre-registration and submittal of a written version of testimony at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony is strongly encouraged. To testify in person, please register using our online form or come to the Public Service Building at 630 South Beretania Street. We have a representative in the lobby to provide intake and further instructions. To request to testify remotely, please complete the online form at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. Requesters will receive an email containing links and instructions to join the Zoom session. Testifiers will have 2 minutes to state their position. A timekeeper will alert testifiers when there is 1 minute remaining. Once the 2 minutes are up, please summarize to allow time for questions from the board. Then, make room for the next testifier. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. Meeting participants who are calling or video conferencing in, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, comment, or wish to enter or second a motion on an action item, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the Zoom chat to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in the message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click on the text bubble icon on the Zoom toolbar.
Special thanks to Wayne and team for that video. It's a lot to start off at each meeting, and appreciate the video to do it rather than reading through. All right, let's take a moment to take roll call for the board members. When I call your name, please say aye, and if attending remotely, make the appropriate disclosures. Vice Chair Kapua-Sproat.
Hi, I'm attending today remotely and I'm calling in from my home office where I'm alone with the door closed. Mahalo.
Mahalo. Board member Brian Andaya.
Hello, everyone. Present, I am by myself in a room, attending remotely.
In the board room today, we have with us board member Max Sword.
Here.
Board member Jonathan Conachero.
Here.
New board member Gene Albano. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Present.
And Ed Sniffen is excused today. . Also in the room with us today are Manager and Chief Engineer Ernie Lau.
Hello.
Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata. Board Secretary Joy Cruz Achu.
Here.
Manager Secretary Kimberly Kawai.
Here.
Information Specialists Stephen Nordstrom and Wayne Maria. Welcome, everybody. We also have a number of folks here in the gallery. Joining us by Zoom are both Jeff Lau and Jessica Wong, who are from the City and County Corp Council. Okay, we have 3 items for action on the agenda today. Madam Secretary, do we have any testimony for any of the action items today?
No testimony on any of the action items.
Okay,
Chair.
thank you so much. So item number 1, approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held on June 26th, 2023. I hope everyone's had a chance to review. Are there any corrections, additions, amendments, or discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
Okay, I heard this moved by Max Sword and seconded by John Conashiro. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Okay, thank you so much. Item 1 is approved. Item number 2, adoption of resolution number 969, 2023, resolution of appreciation for Board Chair Brian Andaya. I'll turn it over to the manager.
Thank you, Chair. We recommend the adoption of Resolution 969, 2023 to recognize and thank Mr. Brian P. Andaya for his excellent service, contributions, and dedication to the board and to the department during his term as chair of the BWS Board of Directors. Chair, if I can read the resolution.
Please.
Thank you. Whereas Brian Andaya has ably served as chair of the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu since September 2016, and he has handed over the position. And whereas his tenure as board chair, Mr. Andaya's work as an attorney and owner of Andaya Consulting LLC and Andaya Real Estate Continuing Education School, and as a partner with ES&A, a law corporation, his former position as Chief Operating Officer of L&L Franchise Inc. and other board memberships and prominence in the community have brought additional recognition and esteem for the board. And whereas his experience as a lawyer and his keen awareness of operational administrative issues of owning and managing a business bolstered Brian P. Andaya's ability to deftly and successfully guide this board and the department through significant departmental and community challenges, such as the Red Hill underground fuel storage tanks facility leaks crisis, adoption of the 30-year water master plan, major changes to the water rate structure, live broadcasting of board meetings, transfer of haiku stairs to the City and County of Honolulu, and the COVID-19 pandemic. He's done this with humility and integrity and wisdom and compassion. And whereas Mr. Andaya has encouraged and supported BWS employees and initiatives for programs to further preserve and protect Oahu's water resources, and he has astutely led the board members in effecting business and policy decisions for the board that will impact the direction and operations of this department for many years to come. And whereas his dedicated service as board chair and continues to serve as a board member to support and mentor the incoming chair is a testament to his firm commitment to maintaining a municipal water system deserving of trust from the public it serves. And now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, that we do hereby express to Brian Andaya our deep appreciation and respect for his steadfast service and leadership of this board and department. And be it further resolved that the members of this board extend to Brian P. Andaya our sincere gratitude and best wishes for continuing success in all of his endeavors, And being finally resolved that this resolution be presented to Brian P. Andaya when he is back on island. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you, Ernie. Any discussion? Vice Chair Sprout.
Thank you so much. Aloha, Brian. I just really want to mahalo you again for all of your time and aloha that you've invested in BWS and really in each of us. It's been an honor to serve with you over these many years and to have you as our chair since 2016. It doesn't feel like it's been 7 years, my goodness. I feel like we've been through so much together, the water use master plan, the first rate study, the transitioning to online meetings through the pandemic, Red Hill, and so much more. And I'm really looking forward to your continued contributions on the rate study and helping to mentor our new chair and so much more. So mahalo, Brian.
Further discussion?
Thank you. Aloha kapua, and rest of the board and everyone else. I just wanted to say mahalo very much. Not quite expected because I've got another 1.5 or 2 years more on the board and not going to go anywhere. But I do want to thank Ernie and the department and everybody else for the thoughts. It's been a sincere honor to serve for 7 years as chair. Time does fly, as Kapua said, and I'm sure the next 1.5 or 2 years will also fly by. I look forward to serving with all of you.
Chair, if I could just add, Brian, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I appreciate you taking us through some of our most challenging times. You've helped to provide sound advice to me throughout this term, and I look forward for another almost 2 years of working with you. Mahalo, Brian. Great job.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. You know, the third paragraph here, you know, talking through all the different things that have, you know, been challenges on Brian's watch. I just want to say thank you so much for your leadership and to Max's point earlier, in Pigeon, the work not Paul, still got plenty more to do. And we really do appreciate you taking the lead on the rate study, as well as we know that this is going to be yet another challenge as we move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the adoption of resolution number 969, 2023, the resolution of appreciation for board chair Brian Andaya.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, was moved by Max Sword, second by John Kaneshiro. Thank you so much. Are there any corrections, additions, or amendments? Okay, hearing none. Motion is passed. Thank you very much, Brian. We'll get this to you when you come in.
Thanks.
Okay, number 3.
Actually, Chair.
That vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to check.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And actually, I'm secretary. The first vote, our new member, I think, has to abstain. Got to change it to. I didn't offer anyone to abstain, but the first one got to abstain. Yeah.
Well,
No, you abstained just because you weren't here for the last meeting to read through
Yes.
just the first one. The second one,
I
can
can.
vote. Yes.
I can vote for Brian.
Yes. Yes. Call my roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capozzo,
aye.
Board Member Brian Andaya,
You know, I'm going to abstain. It feels weird voting for my own.
Board Member Max Sword,
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kaneshiro.
Aye.
Thank you. Board Member Gino Bono.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chair Nalehuan.
Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Motion passes with 5 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for your understanding of a couple of mistakes we might make along the way. Those are entirely my fault.
You get a yellow card for that.
Yellow card. Yeah.
This is not soccer.
Moving on to number 3, authorizing a public hearing to consider the proposed amendment fiscal year 2024 capital improvement program budget, the Board of Water Supply, Ms. Raylene Makabayashi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So we're recommending that the board authorize a public hearing to be held at 2 p.m. or soon thereafter at our next board meeting date of August 28th, 2023. And this would be to consider a resolution to adopt a proposed amended capital improvement program budget for fiscal year 24, which began on July 1st, 2023 and ends on June 30th of 2024. This amendment is necessary to reprogram fiscal year 23 capital improvement projects that were unable to be awarded, such as the Wilhelmina Rise 811 Reservoir Replacement Project and the State of Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, or DLNR, Windward Exploratory Well. This is State Well number 3-2449-002 project. These would be reprogrammed into our fiscal year 24 budget. Additionally, the amendment being proposed in a public hearing next month would be to add a project. It would be an update to our water master plan. If you could go to the next page, please. So this is just a site plan for the Wilhelmina Rise 811 Reservoir Replacement Project. So this was funded in our fiscal year 2023 budget, but we were unable to award a contract. We would need to reprogram this into fiscal year 24 to proceed. And then next page, please. And this project was also programmed. This is a site or project location and kind of rough site map of where this Windward Well, exploratory well is. This was also programmed into 23, but was unable to be awarded in fiscal year 23. So these two projects would be reprogrammed into the 24, and then also the addition of the water master plan update. Oh, and I'm sorry, one more scroll down. And then for your information, there was attached to this agenda item, the draft notice of public hearing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any discussion, questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I know we're gonna be talking about the issue of the raise in rates and so forth and so on. In your projections for future, how are we on tank replacements? I mean, are there a number of them coming up?
No, I don't think so. In the next 6-year kind of plan, there aren't very many storage.
There are actually, so this project was to actually replace a water tank that was about 100 years old.
Yeah.
That supports the Wilhelmina Rise community up there. And also install a new booster pump. We already have an existing reservoir replacement project at Kapa'a 272 Reservoir.
Okay, so we're not facing a, lack of a better word, immediate threat of tank replacement in a short period of time in the future? No?
Right now, like I said, the whole direction is kind of focused on new source development or
Right.
new sources. If we have to install treatment systems, we'll have to look at treatment systems, but
So-
kind of focus on that.
So we're okay then in terms of having to replace tanks, I mean.
We have needs for more storage, especially like in
Right,
Honolulu.
right.
So we just implemented an environmental assessment process for over an 8 million gallon water storage tanks at Waiawa that would eventually support the Honolulu water system. So that's going through the environmental review process right now.
Yeah, because I know we have a problem with the storage capacity in Honolulu property.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and right now we also see the urgency is on new source development.
Yeah.
To spread out pumpage, to actually develop additional capacity.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out in terms of
But we do,
how, I mean, we're okay with tank replacement in the near future.
yeah, we got some projects.
Yeah,
in
okay. Yeah, thank you, that's all I have.
Oh, sorry. Is this a bid problem or CIP repositioning thing, staffing problem? Just why was it?
On the Wilhelmina Rise 811 project, we did put that out to bid in the fourth quarter of fiscal year 23. When we opened bids, though, the bid prices, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder far exceeded the available funding. So it was about over 200% more.
200%.
Yeah, I remember at the last discussion.
It was,
It's pretty
Now,
good.
this is for a 300,000 gallon tank to replace a 430,000 gallon tank. The bid price is nearly $20 million. But it also included replacing an existing booster pump station that will pump water to the next higher reservoir, the 1100 reservoir on the rise. So we're looking at how do we repackage the project or change the approach on the project to see if the cost will come down. This is a project also that had ARPA funding.
Yes,
support,
it had federal funding.
federal funding. So we'll see how it goes.
So you're saying that the tank's gonna be smaller than what is currently there?
Yeah, the
Correct.
tank that's there right now is larger than that system needs. So one of the approaches that we looked at just recently, and it's being looked into more in detail, is can we build a new tank inside the existing tank, which has got a bigger footprint? Can we actually build a new smaller tank within the existing tank? And that'll reduce some of the excavations and retaining walls that we might need for a brand new tank built
Next,
adjacent to it. Yeah. And reduce some of I think this is an area that we had complaints about dust impacts from previous construction, and that board member Sproat might remember, and she's smiling. But this project needs some serious reevaluations. But we want to add it back into the current year CIP project, so we do decide to move forward with this project, we can. Because right now, this was in last year's budget and not in this year's budget. And we couldn't make the award because the bid was way over what we
I
anticipated.
guess just to kind of ask it another way, had the bid come in within the bounds of what the budget expected, would you have gone through with the project, or would you have deferred it?
We would have
Okay. So
awarded.
it was a bid problem.
It was, yeah, not enough. There wasn't sufficient funding to move forward at that
Yeah.
price. So we'd had to the engineers have to take it back and kind of see what we can do to bring the cost down.
We're still trying to rethink the approach, but we're still, looking at our options.
Yes, and then the other one, the exploratory well, that was just a timing thing. Our staff didn't have the chance to award on that one, but it is important to us, so we would like to pursue it. And then as board member Sword mentioned, we've been talking about updating the water master plan. It's become even more apparent that we need to get started on that through our rate study. So that was not something that we started or we're thinking about starting in 23. It's actually something I think we were going to start next year, but we feel it is important to actually push that one up and start it this year.
I think the challenges we face as a utility really warrants that we actually start as soon as possible to update the water master plan. We know it's going to take maybe a couple of years to go through that process, but it's really, we faced a lot of new challenges that back when the original water master plan was adopted in 2016, those challenges really weren't at the forefront of things that we face right now. The Red Hill field tanks, hadn't contaminated the water system with Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam yet at that point.
Any further discussion?
I
If
have
none,
I have
Go
a
ahead.
comment. I really want to mahalo the staff and Ernie in particular for all of the outreach around the tank replacement issue. I know this community has been very engaged and has a lot of mana'o on sort of how things should be done in their community. And I would just encourage the staff to continue the outreach as we move forward with the bid process, to engage them early on so that we can, to the degree that there may be concerns again, we can catch those early on and it won't be a hassle. So, but thanks for all the extra time and grace on that, you folks. Mahalo.
thank you, Kapua. Any further discussion? If none, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So
second,
Okay, so I heard a motion by John and a second by Max. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capuano,
Aye.
Board Member Brian Diane,
Aye.
Board Member Max Ford,
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kanashiro,
Aye.
Board Member Gino Vano,
Aye.
Chair Naleku Anthony.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 6 ayes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for your time on that. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to items for information. We have 7 items and we have some folks offering up testimony as well. Joe, could you help making sure we get through all the testimony today as well?
Okay.
So just call it out if I miss anyone. Number 1 is the update on the Board of Water Supply response to potential impacts of the Red Hill fuel contamination. We have with us today Joyce Lynn and Deputy Manager Erwin Kowalczyk. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, board members. I'll be providing a quick update today on Red Hill. The Board of Water Supply detected low levels of PFAS at the Pearl City shaft at the end of June. And we notified the public in accordance to state regulations. The levels detected are below the Department of Health's action level of 19 parts per trillion, and the calculated hazard index of 0.29 is below the Environmental Protection Agency's 1.0 compliance threshold. The detection of PFAS is part of our regular PFAS testing program, and multiple samples were tested to confirm the finding. We will continue to test for PFAS and we'll continue to monitor for any changes to ensure safe drinking water for our customers. And in the past month, Manager Lau met with Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Ms. Meredith Berger. She's the photo in the center. And also EPA Region 9 Administrator Martha Guzman in an effort to establish more open and direct communications with the different agencies. We are also monitoring and tracking legislative bills related to the fiscal year 2024 National Defense Authorization Act. There are currently 2 bills. The Senate version is S2226, and the House version is HR 2670. These 2 bills include provisions regarding the Red Hill, such as that the Department of Defense is to report on the transition for community engagement and the plans for the removal of the residual fuel in the Red Hill fuel storage tanks prior to the termination of the Joint Task Force Red Hill. The Senate's version is on the floor today. Continue to make amendments before the final vote. The House version passed the floor and was voted on. So the House version will be sent over to the Senate shortly. The Board of Water Supply will continue to monitor and provide updates to the board on the 2 bills as they progresses. Defueling is progressing. The EPA and DOH provided additional approvals on the latest defueling plan supplemental 2. Here is the latest defueling dashboard. All 253 repairs have completed. And on July 17th, which is last Monday, the Joint Task Force began defueling the 4 underground surge tanks in preparation for the anticipated mid-October defueling operation. As of last Wednesday, July 19, 86% of the fuel within the surge tanks were removed. And defueling of the surge tanks is essential to the October defueling because in an event that a spill occurs during the October defueling, released fuel will be directed and pumped into these surge tanks as containments for containment. In the meantime, Joint Task Force is also going through trainings and assessments leading up to the October defueling. To our knowledge, Closure of the facility remains on schedule by August 2027. As mentioned before, there are four options, four proposed alternatives, and the Navy's preferred method is alternative one, which is close in place. Under the Department of Health suggestion, the Navy is looking into beneficial reuse of the tanks, which would be part of alternative two. The Navy's consultants, the Nakupuna companies, is conducting their surveys for ideas of reuse and will be finalizing their survey results by the end of this calendar year. Based on the latest closure plan, the facility closure process would involve cleaning the tanks, dismantling the 3 field pipelines between the tanks and the pump house in Pearl Harbor, and closing the tank facility in a manner that's approved by the EPA. So upcoming events include the Community Representative Initiative Group Scope and Information Meeting that's going to be held this Thursday at the Aliyah Manu Middle School cafeteria from 5 to 7 p.m. And we also have the Red Hill Remediation Roundtable scheduled for August of this year. This concludes my portion of the update. Any questions?
Discussion?
Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you. Next, we have our Deputy Manager, Erwin Kawata, to provide an update for us.
Okay, thank you, Chair and members. Today, what I'm going to do is respond to an inquiry from the board chair and the board itself from last month regarding the Department of Health's exposure assessment report regarding the initial release of contaminants in the water system at Joint Base Pearl Harbor. What we've done is actually prepared a written comment letter to the Department of Health, and what I'm going to do is just summarize that letter and the contents, going over some of the major highlights of our comments. With me online should be our toxicologist, project toxicologist, Dr. Joyce Tuji, online, available to respond to any or answer any questions that might come up after this presentation. So as far as the report itself, Department of Health report is concerned, it's really an assessment to take a look at what was in that water at the time of the release back in November 2021, and kind of estimated, what was the degree of the exposure from the different chemicals that was present, and give pretty much an assessment what the potential health risk could be from estimating that compared to existing health-based levels for different chemicals. From our standpoint, because of the lack of data at the time, there's a lot of uncertainties. Certainly, the difference, the presence of the petroleum contamination and the jet fuel de-icing additive certainly compounds the type of potential impacts. And also, there are other types of additives that was present and cleaners that was potentially present inside of that mixture when it happened. The actual conditions certainly can be increased as a result of using this water at the time in terms of increasing what could be actually found in the air or in aerosol form. In terms of the combined effects of the different chemicals, the report itself didn't really go into that in much detail. Certainly, the Department of Health did note that the additives is a concern for long-term, but not for short-term, as well as regarding things like pregnancy. The report did talk about EPA updating their toxicity levels of these particular chemicals, and those changes can actually lower the environmental action limit from 266 to 91 parts per billion. And the report actually acknowledges that. The report also talks about 91 parts per billion being too low for laboratories to analyze. However, interestingly, if you look at the Joint Base Pearl Harbor's website on what they're actually monitoring in the water system itself, they are reporting levels is down to 50 parts per billion. And as far as us, we do report, or there are methods that can report down to 50 parts per billion and even lower. So as far as the report, it did basically say that the exposure to each of the scenarios was high enough to cause immediate and acute health effects. The primary constituents that the report talks about is the de-icing additives, the overall petroleum chemicals, and certain JP5 chemicals that are present. It did not discuss the potential for the persistent health effects, and that's really the next step in terms of doing a medical assessment. From our standpoint, the presence of fuel additives and the need to monitor those was something that we did talk about in October 2016 in our written comments to the regulatory agencies. And should that, if that data was actually collected at that time, we would certainly have more information than what's currently present. The different types of fuel additives certainly will complicate the looking at the potential health and risk because of the different types. And certainly the presence of all those different types can increase the complexity of doing treatment assessments on how to remove all the different kinds of chemicals that could be present. From our standpoint, we really do continue to think or feel that the Navy needs to really identify the additives present in the fuel stored at Red Hill over the history and to really start conducting testing of all of those different additives and all the different kinds of chemicals that could potentially have been present in the monitoring wells going forward. And with that, happy to answer any questions. And of course, Dr. Tsuji is online available to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erwin. Discussion?
Real quick, and I've probably said this, you're tired of me saying it all the time, but has the Navy indicated once they close the tank, what they're gonna do beyond that?
I think that's the big question is, so
Basically.
the Department of Health is asking them to look at what options for beneficial reuse. So that the Navy would like to close the facility, and they've actually agreed to remove all the pipelines that connect the tanks to Pearl Harbor. But in terms of reuse of the facility, that's still being looked at.
Well, I'm talking more about the chemical that's already in the ground.
Okay, so that's a different matter. That's called trying to define the extent of the contamination, what kind of contaminants, and how do you clean it up or remediate it.
Yeah.
So that's a big discussion that still is ongoing, and there's no real clear plan.
So the Navy has not indicated what they're gonna do after they close, I mean, to ensure that those chemicals that's already in the ground, what happens when it gets to where it goes?
So this kind of comes up to now is the responsibilities of the regulators that are involved in this case. In this situation is Department of Health and US EPA. What are they going to require of the owner of this facility and the creator of this contamination to take what actions? So that's why Joyce in her presentation talked about the remediation roundtable. That's the ongoing discussion that they've invited us to participate in as a subject matter expert to talk about remediation and what should be required. Right now, though, Max, I would say, this facility's been around for 80 years, and what Erwin has pointed out also in his presentation, a variety of fuels stored there. Also, the additives that were involved in the 2021 spill, but the other fuels that have been stored there over its 80-year history of other types of additives. For example, like lead with aviation gas or something.
No, I understand that part. I just want to make sure that those responsible are going to be around after they close the facility to rectify what is already happening.
I agree with you completely.
So that's my only question. I just want to keep
responsibility.
I just want to keep that on the forefront.
Yeah, we should never let them forget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Any other questions?
We do have our toxicologist consultant
Online.
If you had any questions about toxicology, Joyce? Yeah.
Maybe a couple, Erwin, I mean, there's a lot of information in the report and you responded as well. And after going through it all, what should we be doing with the information? We're not the regulator, we're the purveyor, but what should the regulator be doing with this information?
Well, like we said in our letter, we've actually asked the regulator to really follow up on this information. Yeah, do more extensive testing, number one, and number two, take that next step to do a medical assessment and kind of really help the people that have been exposed and the kinds of treatment that we need to have going long term. I think it's something that we've been saying for quite some time, ever since this incident happened, because people did get exposed to these different chemicals, are experiencing different kinds of reactions to that. Many of them, and it's a wide range, and so they need that support. And we are asking the Department of Health to provide those who are affected that kind of support. Yes.
I would add that not only the Department of Health, but also the EPA and maybe the CDC should be doing this. But of course, the responsible party is the Department of Defense. So the medical health effects or impacts, we still get occasional conversations from folks that used to live on the base and were exposed to this water that still tell us they're still feeling some of the effects. And this is quite a while after the incident.
Would you say as well, Erwin, that this kind of punctuates the two pieces of the puzzle that we've had? Is like there's these pukas of information that force us to make guesses, if you will, into what occurred, and then secondly, there's information that we just don't have access to. As an example, what did they use to clean the tunnel with once the spill occurred?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, sadly, this is something that we've been advocating for a very long time. Even when the 2014 release occurred, we asked the regulatory agencies to require the Navy to do really extensive monitoring rather than targeting that list to just a few different kinds of chemicals, because you really don't know what was there. And so any kind of extensive testing would at least generate data, long-term data, and provide at least that trends, if you will, in terms of what was there and what could be found in the future. And that information is going to be very critical going forward for things like such as this exposure assessment and medical assessment. Data is data, and every piece of information is helpful. Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Just a general question. Have we received any information from DOD? Relevant information that.
So I'll just say
Go ahead.
our recent experience, we did make the request for the de-icing agent. We heard at a meeting that shortly after the Red Hill incident, which occurred in November of 2021, the bad spill right near their drinking water source, they got into their drinking water sources on like November 20th, 2021. So we heard that they had taken 2 samples, one out of Red Hill Shaft, that drinking water source, and also a drainage sump in that tunnel where the spill occurred.
That's fairly in a similar proximity.
That is really close.
Yeah.
Very close by, if not above, the Red Hill drinking water source. So to the credit of the DOD, they did provide us, when we requested actual copies of the laboratory reports. And what they found, and they showed us 2 laboratory reports. We're not aware if they did any other testing, but
Prior.
Yeah, prior or after. But they had detection, non-detect in the drinking water source Red Hill Shaft in that test sample, that test analysis of that sample. But they did find in the sump quite high levels of the de-icing agent. I guess it's called Digme there. So this is I try to be positive, at least that they were responsive to our request for this information, and it didn't take very long for them to respond.
So do we feel like they're trying
I
to provide
think there's all kinds of
information that would allow us to
I am trying to look at
or are they being calculated in terms of what they want to disclose?
Gene, I could be all of the above. I don't know.
Fair. Thank you.
Any further discussion? I know you're welcome. We have a few people who wanted to testify on this. I don't think Erwin. She is Susan.
Thank you for coming, Susan.
Thank you.
Sometimes I think I should be sitting there to answer some of these questions. And Ernie, I appreciate you talking to Kat earlier because my presentation would come off a little bit differently.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, last night I sent Ernie and Kathleen Roger's video, Roger Brewer. So whenever I say Roger, it's gonna be Roger Brewer, his video that explained the 98 pages. And then I also transcribed it, which is in here. You guys can do it yourselves, but the reason I transcribed it is because the 98-page document cannot be taken to a doctor. The transcription talks about health assessments. Roger is not a doctor. And the person responsible for the health assessments is Diane Felton, the toxicologist. So that's where you need to hear some squeaking from, because she's ghosted. Upcoming, the Commission on Water Resource Management has the Navy, and it is the closure part. So I'm sure it's going to be Rear Admiral Barnett, because Vice Admiral Wade is in charge of the defueling. They're going to be talking about closure and reuse. And in supplement 2, I know you guys haven't read the whole thing, so I'll just give you two points. The Navy will not fund the reuse. And if the land gets and the Navy will not transfer the land. That's 2 points there. Okay, so you know I'm going to keep on going. Some of the important parts that I pointed out. So what I did is I took the Board of Water Supplies presentation and I made my own stuff here, making comments, only because I watched the video and transcribed. So I knew a little bit more than what is in the 98 pages that, you know, can drive anybody cuckoo if they're reading it. It was an exposure assessment. It wasn't a health assessment. And he says that throughout. He says the purpose of this assessment and the report was to answer the simple question of what was I exposed to? And that's not a simple question, because we're already talking about what we don't know versus what we do know. But in my opinion, knowing what we do know is valuable. And whether we'll ever get the unknowns, I don't think I'd put my money on that bet, and I'd start working with what we do know. And I have heard from the people that have gotten contaminated that they have taken my transcript to their doctors in order for the doctors not to have to read the 98-page report, because it's just too much. Doctors are going to spend that much. He covers the pathways of inhalation, ingestion, and dermal absorption. Oh, by the way, the reuse, that's going to be on that agenda for the Commission on Water Resource Management, which I do plan on testifying at, because they had taken this survey and they're getting the feedback from the survey. And because I don't trust them, I would rather the people of Hawaii start testifying on this and saying, we don't want to reuse. The legislatures want to reuse because then they can collect revenue. My opinion only. Okay, good to know that the environmental action levels could be lowered. Good point, Irwin, about noticing that one of their samples actually detected JP5 down to 47 ppb, where somebody is saying that they can't detect it that low, but they can. It's just like y'all's tests. When you do testing, and if Irwin says non-detect, I'll ask him for the number. The last time I did, he said 25. So we can go down. It's just that who wants to know the information or who wants to hide the information? I don't know what this is, okay? It was a lengthy overview. It was about 40 minutes. I would like it if you guys could take some time. But on one of the pages, which I really, really support, DOH's discussion of various chemicals reaffirm prior Board of Water Supply urging the testing of groundwater for more than just TPH and a few related chemicals. And if we can get that done or move in that direction or keep insisting on it, we're going to get ahead of the ball game. So the Department of Health, Kathleen Ho, Joanne, Diana, the Navy, the EPA, they are responsible for this last page. I think it was of Erwin's presentation. They are responsible. And I just want to say kudos to Roger for letting it out. He did us justice, and he did the people that were contaminated justice. It just took too long.
Thank you, Susan.
Aloha. Sorry for so long, but you've been meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we have a couple folks on remote testimony. First would be Susan Gorman-Chang.
I'm sorry, Chair, she's not signed on, so
Okay.
we can move on to Meredith Wilson.
Next, we would have Meredith Wilson.
Good to see you guys again, board. My name is Meredith Wilson, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you again about updates regarding Red Hill. As a reminder, I lived on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam for 5 years and experienced intense neurological health issues, beginning especially in late October 2021. Only a month later did I learn that countless neighbors also had been dealing with vertigo, migraines, and vision problems too, all pointing toward our toxic exposure. Here we are 20 months later, and I'm still trying to grapple with my sense of security being completely shattered. When I used to come home from working in town, I had to show my ID to an armed guard just to enter my neighborhood within a protected U.S. military base, only to be poisoned by the very entity my husband works for in my seemingly safe home via supposedly clean and life-giving water. 20 months later now, we finally have a preliminary exposure assessment from the Department of Health, and not really from the DOH itself, but from its senior environmental scientist, a geologist who assesses risk, not really health effects. But it's more information that we've received thus far, just like Susan just said, from our chemical exposure, from the Navy, or any of our doctors. So here are my items. 1, will you help the public get more health effects information from DOH, and in particular, state toxicologist, about this exposure assessment? Please use your lever of that relationship to gain more knowledge, since these chemicals are in our collective aquifer. I know the ATSDR is reviewing this assessment, but where does the Department of Health stand? Since we now know that antifreeze does not dissolve in water as expected, is BWS currently or planning to test all their wells for DIGME, or that what Ernie was talking about earlier, that fuel system icing inhibitor antifreeze? 3, the most troublesome yet actionable revelation from this assessment was that the US EPA updated their toxicity factors for individual carbon ranges in 2022. This allowed the assessment author to update the expected screening level or action level for TPH, and it should be 3 times more stringent. And that means lower. So just like Erwin talked about, from 266 down to 91, just like we've all been talking about. It states that this should be taken into consideration for future monitoring. Well, guess what? Since that was typed up, today is the future. Long-term monitoring is happening right now. If this is the case, the current 266 parts per billion being used for LTM is completely off base and even proves dangerous for the people still living there. The previous EAL was based off of a 2009 toxicity factor from the EPA. And I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, you guys. Can BWS's representative to the DISF plead to the IDWST that LTM needs to be amended ASAP? Lots of acronyms, but the military is used to it. Mahalo is always protecting the Y and furthermore, the people of Oahu. Thanks, guys. It's good to see you all.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Any questions for any of the testifiers?
No, some really good points, Meredith. We'll take a serious look at them.
Thank you so much.
But I think this defueling information sharing forum, maybe it's also the remediation roundtable that is actually more pertinent. JTF information sharing forum is only focused on defueling. That's their primary mission, but the remediation roundtable, I think, has broader environmental issues to deal with.
Yeah, and since that's coming up in August, that would be great, Ernie. Thank you.
Okay, so keep an eye on that one too. Thank you.
Joe, did we have Susan log on? Know what that was?
She did log on and now logs back off. I will let you know,
Okay.
when she comes back on and
We
then
can,
we'll have
we can
the
check
next-
her out in order. And we also have her, her written comments that we can enter into the record as well. Okay, thank you. And then we have, one other person who sent written comment, but is not here to testify. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
David Tupper.
Yeah.
So it looks like David's here twice, and all of his comments will be put into the record. And, the board should have his packet as well. Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, we're gonna move on. This is, item for information number 2, online access to Board of Water Supply service line material inventory and water testing results for lead and copper rule. The chair recognizes Deputy Manager Erwin Kawata.
Thank you, Chair and members. I'm going to ask Kathleen Pahinui to help me present this. I also want to recognize here present in the room our consultant, Ian Arakaki, who's the principal, who's did a major contribution to this particular project. So about 2 years ago, the Environmental Protection Agency actually implemented changes to the lead copper rules. A major change was to inventory all of the water service laterals, which is that pipe that connects, that takes the water from our system to the customer, identify what it's made of, and the test results also make that information and the test results that's collected from representative water samples available online. So today what we're going to show you is what we have online. Before I do that, next slide, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the background of the rules. So about 2 years ago, like I said, the changes of the rule. What's shown on screen is the regulatory requirements or the limits as to how much lead and copper can be present at the 90th percentile. 90th percentile is really 90% of the samples analyzed and tested has to be below those action limits over there. And of course, in between all of that, there is a lead trigger level that really says if you have something a little bit above it, but less than 10, you've got to start replacing your lead pipes. Next slide. So the inventory, like I mentioned earlier, was to prepare this inventory, identify what are the materials, and to categorize the materials into 4 specific categories. Either it's lead, not lead, something you don't know what the material is, and of course, any kind of galvanized line that was ever once connected to a lead service lateral. Next slide. Also, based on that inventory, you select sample locations from residential homes and analyze those samples for lead and copper. The rule also requires doing some lead tap water testing in schools and daycare facilities. That's going to start for us next year. And then, of course, utilities with lead service line, there is a requirement that you have to replace them. Next slide. So just from definitions, this is what we're talking about as the utility side of the meter, which shows the water meter. It is just outside of the property line. And then that portion is the customer side of the meter. So this rule actually requires you to identify what's on the utility side of the meter as well as on the customer side of the meter. Okay, next slide. So here are the results. We actually have 175,911 service lines. And you can, the table there shows the number that are all of them, all the different components that are not lead, some that are lead status is not known, and some combination thereof. Now, typically, when we say a service lateral, we think of just one pipeline that's connected to the water system all the way up to the meter, and from the meter into the property itself. But in our case, that water line is, or that service lateral is actually subdivided into 4 distinct parts. And as a result, you can see for each of the different parts, we actually had to identify what was lead and what was not lead. The table on the right shows all the different types of materials that was discovered in our, or found in our water system. Now, this project actually took, or this part took about 2 years to complete. Up to 30 different individuals that was involved, and we actually was doing it during the pandemic, during the height of the pandemic, when a lot of places was closed down. We actually took a look at state archives. We got information for the city and county, but one of the places that we did find information that was really unexpected was from the University of Hawaii Hamilton Library, from the Hawaii Pacific Collection. There we found actual information that changes dating back to 1905, prohibiting the use of lead in water service laterals. Next slide. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go to that link. Okay, so you go to the board's lead copper website. This is available right now on boardofwatersupply.com. And this is the search page. And you enter in 630 South Beretania Street as an example. There's 2, pick the first one. So this is what you're gonna see. So it's gonna show you on the bottom, showing the water main, the lateral, the inlet, outlet, and the customer service line. And it will tell you what the material is of each of those different segments. So in the case of the lateral, if you look on the top, it says it's copper. The curb stop, the inlet portion is copper. The outlet portion is copper. And then the customer side is copper. And so in here at Beretania, that lateral is actually made of copper. We have a definition of each of the different components on the right side of the page. And you can actually do this for any location. You enter in an address, or you can actually enter in a street, and it'll list all of the different streets available. So kind of go back. And okay, so based on that inventory, we have to collect water samples from different residential homes. The island is subdivided into 8 water systems based on our regulatory requirements. So if you pick one of those, let's say the Honolulu water system, which spans from Pearl City up to Hauula, you click that. And it'll show you the test results. You can scroll down and show you all of the test results for all of the different locations and what those results are, both for the lead amount and the copper amount. You can do that for any one of the water systems, and it will show you. It will also show you what the 90th percentile value, and there in this particular case, it will show you that for the lead, it was non-detect. There is a copper value, but it's below the action limits. So in this particular case, it's compliant with the rules. This is the first 6 months. So from January through June of this year, these are the results for that period. It's required by rule for us to publish this. So this is available online. We are currently doing the second 6-month period from July through the end of this year, December. And that will be published once those results are available. All of this has been coordinated with Department of Health. We also have all of this, the main lead page also will be available in different languages as required by the rule. Okay. Awesome. So any questions? I don't know, you're able to go back out?
The service line?
Yeah. So just for fun on the service line, put in S Beretania. Or Beretania, just put Beretania. Go back. Just put in Beretania. Beretania. So here's a complete listing of all of the different services on either North or South Beretania Street. You can click on any one of those. You can look for your own specific address, or you can look at whatever is on our database.
Wow.
Any place on island. Yeah?
I would like to just recognize Erwin Kawata and his son, Tiako, for doing this work. Erin, tell me, answer this question. How far ahead did you actually start working on getting us in compliance with the revised lead copper rule amendment?
Well, EPA actually proposed the lead copper changes in November of 2019. I started in November of 2019. The rule actually was finalized in January of 2021, but I started 6 months before that. And we actually had to develop the scope of work 6 months ahead of that because we had to go out, procure the services. So there was a huge amount of, I had to take a leap of faith. I looked at all the different requirements in the rule. There was some of it I kind of knew, even if it wasn't finalized, I knew that it wasn't going to change. So I based our scope of work on that, incorporated a flexibility because we didn't really know. But I know we have a very large water system, 175,000 service connections. So I knew it was going to take us, we estimated 2.5 years to do. We actually got it done in 2 years.
Awesome. So I just want to thank Erin and the team here from Olympiaco Ian and his associate. I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Michael Ross.
Michael Ross.
For the excellent work, because are we ahead of schedule?
We're ahead of schedule. This is actually due in October of next year. So we are over 1 year ahead of schedule. And to my knowledge, we're the first to be able to publish this. And again, all of this is required by rule to make it available. So as we have regular projects going on to do service lateral renewals. Our capital projects division does that. So all of that information is being updated at the same time.
Question for you. You know, in the shadow of like what we see about Flint, Michigan, having to just tear up all these laterals and make all these adjustments. Why is it that Hawaii has fared so well, do you think?
Well, a couple of things. I think some of the changes they made back as early as 1900, recognizing that lead shouldn't be part of our system. But I think more importantly, it's our water quality. Yeah, it's our water quality that's very neutral and non-aggressive to the pipe. And it is that particular component, I think, that in some cases you'll hear that some of our mains, after a long period of time, it's, our field operations will say that the condition is really good on the inside, and that's really because of the water quality. Yeah.
Awesome. Very fortunate.
Are we doing any outreach to really showcase this awesome tool to the public? I think
Well,
it's great.
Ernie,
Just
I'll let
gives
you.
us-
We will.
We do well. Wonderful. Yeah.
In the state of Hawaii, I think we're out in front of everybody else.
Yeah. So if you want, you can, when you have time, go to borderwatersupply.com.
I already got it down.
Water
Sharing
quality.
it with my family, but great outreach opportunity.
Yeah, go to water quality. Under it says lead copper rule. Click that page, and it'll take you to all of this, and you'll be able to see this.
Well done.
Can I ask for a hand for Erin?
This group too. They did all the heavy lifting.
Finding some good news.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you folks for all the effort. Okay, next item for information. Number 3, recruitment status. Chair recognizes Terry Ann Akana for the update.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. I'm Terry Akana. I'll be giving the recruitment status report for today in place of Michelle Thomas. So for the period covering April, I think we should change can we get to the one? Yeah, please. For the period covering April 2023 to June 2023, we had 20 new hires, 6 promotions, 1 demotion, 1 transfer, and 17 separations. This is a breakdown of the transactions for the months of April, May, and June that we accomplished in our office during that time frame. And the last chart shows our demographics in projections of our retirements. So you'll notice that the purple piece of the pie is the largest piece, thankfully, and those are farthest from retirement. I'll pause here to take any questions before we move into a brief presentation.
Any questions, comments?
I'll just say I'm on that red pie.
I was gonna ask you why you're earning.
Okay, thank you.
So Ernie wanted us to provide an update to some of the ongoing recruitment and retention efforts being done by the Board of Water Supply. So we put together a few slides to highlight some of the things that we're doing. In Michelle's last presentation in April, she highlighted the various activities and significant efforts to attract and recruit candidates. In addition to those efforts, it's important for us to ramp up our retention strategies as well. We are currently focusing on additional and better resources for our management team. One of those resources is the new reference guide for managers and supervisors. We want to be able to empower them with appropriate knowledge so they themselves can be better resources for their staff, which enhances employee engagement. This guide gathers into one document most of the resources that new and continuing supervisors need to be aware of so they can be successful in their roles. These fundamental concepts provide a foundation for consistent management across the Board of Water Supply and ensures that managers and supervisors are promoting a culture of fairness, transparency, and inclusiveness throughout our organization. Topics that are covered include background information on the Board of Water Supply as an organization, basic overviews of critical city and Board of Water Supply policies and procedures, and links to pertinent references that can be found on BWS websites and city websites. In addition to our regular skills-based trainings for staff, we have created training curriculum for new and emerging leaders that expand their knowledge of best practices in management and equips them with resources to be successful leaders within our organization. The investment into our training shows our commitment to the professional development of our staff and our strides to promote from within. While we pursue these retention-related efforts, we continue to make concerted efforts in recruitment, including participating in the city's boosted advertising plan and outreach events like the upcoming job fair promoted by the city. These are photos of BWS employees that may be featured in the city's upcoming recruitment advertisements, which will likely be promoted on TV and on the Board of Water Supply and city websites and social media platforms. We'll be participating in the upcoming Hawaii Career Expo on August 23rd at the Neil Blaisdell Center Exhibition Hall. There will be a variety of jobs featured for BWS, all of which are civil service. Some of them are various accountants, assistant program administrator for field operations and water system operations, various levels of engineers, construction inspector aides, and engineering support technicians. The manager and chief engineer and several other representatives of our leadership team will be in attendance to provide their perspectives on what working for the BWS is like and to encourage job seekers to apply. We also just registered to participate in the University of Hawaii's Engineering Job Fair in September, where we'll have the opportunity to speak with soon-to-be graduates about our engineering position. This concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a huge mahalo for all the efforts in recruitment. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, moving on. Next item for information is 2023 customer satisfaction survey with Becky Ward online, I believe. Aloha,
Yes.
Becky.
Aloha.
We have the other Becky as well. Becky Soon.
Yes. Yeah,
Two
I do
Beckys.
want to acknowledge we have our president of Ward Research, Becky Soon, online as well.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha nui, Chair Anthony. Me ko papo'oiha vai nui ko mau a mahalo na ko hoki pa mai a me ko hana nui no ko ahune. We really just appreciate the opportunity to continue to support the important work that the board is doing, as well as the staff and leadership at BWS. So I believe we're on our 5th wave here of tracking, and we just really appreciate being able to continue to support you all. I'm here just to support Becky Ward, who you know well, and appreciate again the opportunity.
Aloha.
If you want to take Jamie's Senex testimony before we start Becky's presentation, she's on.
Oh, Jamie.
Jamie Senex.
Oh, where did Jamie come from?
This register.
Is this for,
Red
for
Hill.
Red Hill?
Yeah,
Do you want to take it now or should we?
she's probably on, possibly on the mainland. There might be a time difference.
Folks, we just had one person jump on for testimony for an earlier item, so I'm just gonna give her a couple of minutes to just, move through quickly. I think she's in a later time zone than us.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you for your understanding.
Thank you, Becky and Becky.
Do we have Jamie online as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Aloha, Jamie.
Aloha, thank you for squeezing me in. I just wanted to, I know you've been talking with Kat and other affected families, and I just wanted to come on to express my gratitude and the biggest mahalo for the latest assessment that has come out. Mihailo was back in the hospital a couple of weeks ago for the same issues. He went through another relapse and he finally got the diagnosis on the mainland with the chronic water poisoning. That's just the beginning of the battle. But I wanted to give you the firsthand testimony. That assessment came out 2 weeks into his recent relapse and is what opened up the doors for the doctors here to understand more in depth and take things more seriously. As I'm listening to the testimony of others, and as well as you guys talking about the lead in the schools, I appreciate you guys looking into that. I know I brought it up last summer. My children's results, they still have lead in their bodies, and right now we just got confirmation that we still are so toxic that we can't even start proper detox yet without that core group of medical experts looking at us and monitoring us, because it would be too risky. So I really do want you to know that the efforts are working and the efforts are helping us. We do need those advisories changed so the communication between the CDC mainly and in Oahu and between doctors is more fluent and more readily available, because this is unknown. And as you guys know, we were on island for quite some time and we're exposed longer than most. I hate saying no more Exhibit A's, but it's true. And people are still reaching out with issues. I would love to share with the Board of Water Supply a video that was shared with me last week, if at all available, or able to do that by a family locally on base. People are having upticks of symptoms, and it started about 2 to 3 weeks ago. They're reaching out on social media. More and more people are realizing, but your efforts are helping and they are making a difference, not just for my family, but for others. And I can't thank you guys enough. I really can't. Everybody said we would not ever get to this point. History had proven that before. There's still a lot to find out, and there's still more things to uncover, unfortunately, with what we were exposed to. I am more than willing to share any data that I have collected on my own for me and my children with you guys, so you're able to see a more comprehensive picture between air quality testing, water testing, and as well as our bodies. But please don't grow tired of this issue. I know you won't. The why is the most important thing. But I I just wanted to thank you and implore that Oahu keeps fighting these advisories to change and for the truth to come out, because the road that, when I stood up at the first town hall almost 2 years ago and pleaded for them to tell the truth so nobody else walked the road that I'm walking, and I've been walking for a long time, I now have the answers, but it breaks my heart every day, truly, to see more and more people still falling ill. So we got to keep their nose held to the grindstone. And I can't thank you guys. You guys rallied behind all of us. So just wanted to give you an update that what you guys are doing is working and it is helping. And I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much for making the time for us today.
Thank you, Jamie, and pray for your good health.
We're getting
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you so much.
Mahalo.
Mahalo.
Thank you, Joy, for flagging that. Appreciate it. Becky, thank you folks for your patience, and please continue.
Absolutely, that's important stuff. We are delighted to be here and to present the fifth wave of the customer satisfaction and perception study. And let's go on to the next slide. You know, many of you have seen many of these presentations, but our overall objective is to track measures of satisfaction and other metrics related to perceptions of the board and the fulfillment of your mission. We started this in 2015 and we have undertaken it every 2 years. It is a mixed methodology, phone and online. It's important to note the dates. This was fielded in late March, and around that time, we believe there was media coverage of some of the PFAS. So it is important to keep that in mind as we go through this. We interviewed a total of 701 Oahu residents. Maximum sampling errors plus or minus 3.7, well exceeding minimum levels. So we're in good shape. We've got good tracking data. It also reflects the composition of the island by age and ethnicity, by income, and by geography. So if we can go on to the next, we jump right in. You'll recall that we've always used a 7-point satisfaction scale. And we've always focused on the top 2 box or the 6 or 7 ratings, strong satisfaction. And what we've added this time is information about the mean ratings, because what we've found over time is that when the don't knows fluctuate, that top 2 box can fluctuate, but it doesn't necessarily mean a decline in satisfaction. Often it does, but not always. So we have 2 ways of looking at it, top 2 box and mean scores. So if we go on to the next, this is overall satisfaction. We always start with a question about overall satisfaction with the board. Again, on the left-hand side, these are just the 6 and 7 ratings, the top 2 box. So overall, strong satisfaction in 2023 registered at 52%. And if we look at what's happened with satisfaction since it peaked in 2017 or 2019, this is a pattern that we're going to see throughout a lot of this data. 2017 and 2019, as we have discussed internally, was a time of a lot of communication around your master plan and the rate study and what was going to happen with rates. So there was a lot of communication at that time. We take a look at bill payers and at non-bill payers. The bill payers, we see the same kind of pattern from 2019. Non-bill payers, it's been trending downward. Some of that is due to don't knows, and that's why we look over at the mean ratings on the right, and we see the peak in 2019, and then all bill payers, non, and overall has been falling off. And on the next slide, we've got an analysis of some subgroups. Throughout the data, we saw that older people, 55 and over, and younger, we see a big difference. Older people more likely to be strongly satisfied, as are upper income households. Younger people and lower income households less likely to be strongly satisfied. And this is a pattern we see throughout a lot of the data, and really has a message about communicating with some of the younger people. And I will loop back to this a little bit later. On the next slide, now we're looking at satisfaction with your fulfillment of your mission. Providing dependable water, you see that it peaked at 80 to 81% strong satisfaction. That's fallen off. We do have the mean ratings on the right, and we see that the mean rating has indeed fallen off. That's not just due to more people saying they don't know. Here's the one that concerns me and concerns all of us, is providing safe water. You see that was really stable across 2015 to 2021. There's a big decline in that at this point, and that's the red line in the mean ratings. A 16-point drop in top 2 box. I'll show you a little bit more on this in a moment. And then the third part of your mission, keeping water rates affordable. Well, that's always been a tough one perceptually, continues to be a tough one, particularly coming out of the pandemic. It has started to level off a little bit, but affordability will always be a challenge. And we know that your bill isn't all reflective of Board of Water Supply costs. That's a continuing issue for you. So on the next slide, we take a look at satisfaction with your ability to provide safe water by geography. And when we look at the highlighted section, those who live in Pearl City, Aiea, Moanalua, there is a statistically significant drop, 74% top 2 box in 2021, down to 53% currently. Mean ratings have fallen dramatically. As you look at some of the other geographies, chances are some of those might have tested statistically significant, but often it's a matter of the size of the subsample. But Pearl City, Aiea, Moanalua, of course, being the most impacted relative to some PFAS discovery and, of course, the Halava concerns. So on the next slide, now we're looking at those subsample findings again. 55 plus, more likely to be strongly satisfied with your ability to provide safe water, and younger people, again, less so. And males, more so than females, which is interesting. Perhaps female concern about family members, children, not sure why. Men would have those concerns as well. On to the next slide. Now we're looking at customer service. And customer service satisfaction has fallen off, and we can't really find a reason why. If we look over at the mean ratings, they've leveled off at this point a little, but there was certainly a decline from 2017 and 2019 down to 21 and 23. If we look at bill payers who are the most likely to contact customer service, the drop off isn't quite as dramatic, but it's still there. We know that the ways that customers contact you, those ways are changing. And we've talked about maybe asking some more questions about online communications. So if we can go to the next slide. Now, we've asked what proportion has contacted the board. That had fallen. You see that it was at the highest levels in 2019 and 2021, certainly during the pandemic. So only 7% of customers say they have contacted you. That center section is really a very small subsample, small base. The satisfaction of those folks has fallen. Again, it's a very small subsample, but there's no explanation for it on the right-hand side. So why do you say that? The most common responses are positive ones. Helpful, professional, fast response, problem was resolved. And then we get to long wait time. That hasn't increased as I mentioned. Problem not resolved, that hasn't. So there's really nothing here to help us understand why this might be. It's possible that it's just part of this overall satisfaction. And so people are rating more critically. We don't really know for sure. On the next slide, we do look at satisfaction with board employees. We know that exposure to board employees during the pandemic was less frequent. There was less visibility, less community interaction, and satisfaction there, strong satisfaction has fallen across these categories. You can see the mean ratings. Many of them have reflected that same kind of decline that we see in the top two box over time. And again, I'll say that we can't find a good explanation for it in the data. So it's something for us to try to look into further, for you to look into further in subsequent studies and in your internal data. But I believe there's nothing in your internal data to explain all of this. On the next slide, now we are looking at the quality of water and delivery of water service. So strong satisfaction with your water pressure is really pretty consistent. It's fallen off a little bit. That's the blue line in the middle. The quality of water has, I'll say, taken a hit, a perceptual hit. That's fallen from what was pretty stable levels from 72 to 71% over the years. And the taste of your water has fallen off. I don't know that there's a reason for that either. Kapua, I see you shaking your head. Often, you know, this is perceptual, and perception may follow concerns about the safety of water. Yep, who knows? On the next slide, now we're looking at other aspects of your mission, protecting and managing resources. The job you're doing, that has fallen off a little. Certainly not a major concern here. This is protecting and managing resources. The next slide looks at the job you're doing with the delivery of water service. Satisfaction, strong satisfaction with providing water to customers. I mean, you're still doing that. That's fallen off just a little bit, but still very high levels, 84 to 77%. That's nothing to be concerned about. Reliability, that's really pretty consistent considering what we've seen in some of the other data, some of the other changes. Fast response to trouble calls. It is useful here to look over at the mean rating because that parallels what we see in the top two box. Fast response to trouble calls, satisfaction was highest in 2017 and 19. I don't know that your response was any faster then, but perceptually throughout the data, that was a strong time for you. On the next slide, we've got maintaining and replacing the water delivery system. This has fallen off a little. When we look at the mean ratings on the right-hand side, the slope is about the same thing that we see here. It was pretty consistent up until 2021. And now this time it's fallen just a little. On the next slide, so rates and cost. Fairness of water rates. This has been an area of little satisfaction for some time. Hard to know how people judge fairness. But if we remember how they feel about affordability, this parallels that pretty much. The peak in strong satisfaction was in 2017. Again, a time of a lot of discussion of water rates and planning. Bill payers, we see the same kind of phenomenon that we see overall. On the next slide, perceptions of the affordability. How affordable would you say your water service is? And that has fallen, and it started off pretty low. We do remind ourselves that going through the pandemic and going through subsequent inflation, most of us feel like nothing is affordable anymore. But water service moves right along with everything else. So bill payers follow the same pattern. On the next slide, water conservation. Now we move into an area where we see a lot of positive in a few slides. How would you rate the board's efforts to inform residents about how to conserve water and keep their bills lower? So this has trended down. I suspect because the next few slides are going to show us that they're feeding back that they're hearing from you about conservation. And I suspect that it's the keep your bills lower that's causing this to decline. And we're going to talk about whether we should rephrase this. Because if we go on to some of the subsequent slides, and if we can go ahead, thank you. Water conservation messages, this was testing impact. 3 messages tested down the left-hand side. Reducing your water usage could lower your water bill. That sits at the top, followed really closely by it's our responsibility to care for each other. And then, is there enough water for Oahu's future? That's fallen off in terms of likely impact. But responsibility and of course, relating it back to the bill. Those are the strongest 2 messages that were tested. On the next slide, we asked people whether or not they've made any changes in their daily routines in the past year or 2. And I think this reflects what you've seen in your internal metrics. You've seen people respond to your conservation message. So 56% said they'd made changes in 2021, and in 2023, it's 65%. So what changes have you made? On the right, topping the list, shorter showers or fewer showers. And you see that's far atop the list. Then washing dishes. I see an increase here in being more mindful of running water, which is really good playback. You want people to be mindful of what they're using. An increase in washing clothes less often, and then you see some other mentions down the list, but showers always top the list. That's what comes to mind first for people. On the next slide, now we're asking about who has responsibility for water conservation, and it's a rating for each of these entities. The Board of Water Supply sits at the top of this list, just like it has last time when we first started asking. So you have the greatest responsibility, followed by government. And interestingly, residents have far less impact and less responsibility in water conservation than does government and the Board of Water Supply. But still, it is at 77%. So that's 3/4 of the people saying a top 2 box responsibility. But they do see it more so for the board than any other entity. On the next slide, we asked people what suggestions they would make to others if someone wanted to conserve water. There's showers atop the list. And then mindful, being mindful. I think that's an important word, and I'm really happy to see that. Being more mindful of running water. And then you see there's nothing else that really ticked up. There were some little declines, but showers and mindfulness top the list. On the next slide, now we're looking at community outreach and message recall. We ask about some programs and some slogans you have out there. Pretty consistent. 2021 is green. And then blue, we see a tick upward for water smart and water sensible. Not huge ticks up, but enough so to be noticed. So there is growing awareness of those two. On the next slide, we're looking at programs and activities. So this is our only direct question about Red Hill. Have you seen or heard of the board's activities and programs in the following areas? Information regarding Red Hill. 83% of the people we interviewed said they had seen or heard something from the board about Red Hill. Frankly, you wonder about the other 17, but 100% of the people never do anything. So that's atop the list of their awareness. Coming next is water conservation, linked to Red Hill certainly, but a strong mention and a significant uptick since 2021. So that's great playback. And this is really taking from mentions we're going to see in a couple slides about water main breaks. And you see that repair and maintenance of the water system stayed pretty constant. Watershed protection ticked up. That's important, statistically significant increase. The education program ticked up after it fell off during the pandemic, when of course you were not in schools or communities. So happy to see that start rebuilding. And water recycling ticked back up, which is terrific. On to the next slide. Communication from the board. How do you prefer to get information? We've got a lot of changes here. Social media has topped the list for the first time. Social media such as Facebook and Twitter, 36% mention. TV, 35%. Then you see email, which used to top the list along with TV. Mail, then we see Board of Water Supply bill inserts, website, radio, newspaper, these all ticked up. My read on this is that people really want more information from the board and probably have sought out information in recent past. So some great playback here. And on the next slide, we take a look at the responses by age segments. And I'm sure any of us could have predicted this, but it is really clear. Total is the first column that we just reviewed. 18 to 34, social media dwarfs other sources. 35 to 54, that middle age group has email comparable with social media and TV. And 55 plus has social media down at the bottom, playing back TV very strongly, which tells you that a multi-pronged approach continues to be really important. But early on, I mentioned how important it is to connect with younger people, because you'll recall that they were less likely to express strong satisfaction. So this chart has a lot of importance from that perspective as well. On the next slide, digital information. If you said social media, what were you referring to? What do you use? Instagram and Facebook top the list, with YouTube on the second tier. And then the others are really on a third tier. So Instagram and Facebook are still the predominant, followed by YouTube. So some good guidance here about communications. On the next slide, in the last 6 months, do you remember seeing or hearing any messages or news stories? That was 38% in 2021. Look at the increase there. That's a huge increase. And on the right, you see what the huge increase is coming from. It's mentions of Red Hill. And you see that has really taken away from mentions of water main breaks. The focus is on Red Hill and secondarily water conservation messages that they recall from the board, which is, terrific playback on the water conservation. And knowing that the board is communicating about Red Hill is really important as well. On the next slide, sources of information. We've been asking this since the beginning. Who do you trust to talk about freshwater issues? Scientists almost always come out on top, but the board is very close behind. So 68% strongly trust those top 2 box mentions. And you see scientists ticked upward to 70%. Same kind of pattern for the board. You are now at 66%, really comparable with scientists. And then there's a gap. UH follows. Nonprofit organizations, you see they have been building in credibility or strong trust. State Department of Health has been trending downward. That's 51%, falling off from a high of 60 back in 2017. On the next slide, it's a continuation. Elected officials, not good news for them. That's 22% strong trust for elected officials, and business leaders bringing up the bottom and falling off as well. So the board continues to be trusted. I think we can skip this one in the interest of time, and we'll go to conclusions. So we believe that we see the impact of the Red Hill contamination and the media coverage, although we can't point to anything specifically in the data other than awareness. And perhaps it's awareness of the PFAS as well, given the timing of the data collection in March. We saw satisfaction levels decline significantly for your ability to provide dependable and safe water. Safe water, I think, being the biggest concern for you, significantly noted in those areas most impacted. Residents still equally trust you and scientists regarding the job you're doing to protect and sustain water resources. Those perceptions remain relatively steady, as well as the job you're doing to maintain the system. Affordability of water ratings and the fairness, they didn't fall off from 2021 to 23 significantly so, but we saw all of these fall off since the high of 2017 and 19. And I think we can learn a lot from what was going on then and the value of that communication. On the next, continuing the conclusions, similar to the previous tracking, most residents believe that you have the greatest responsibility in water conservation. Your communications about Red Hill really reinforce the water conservation messages, and really happy to see our data reflect the same kinds of changes that you've seen in the water metrics regarding the water usage metrics. We do see a rebuilding of awareness of your educational programs, which had to decline during the pandemic. We saw what the data said about digital communications. So the declines that we saw throughout, often there's a halo effect over data. And this may be the opposite. This may be Red Hill causing problems for you in areas beyond just safe water. And I'll say whether you deserve it or not. But we don't have anything in the data to support or refute it, but it seems pretty apparent. I would be happy to answer questions or hear comments.
Board members.
A lot to take in.
I know. I know.
It is, yeah.
Vice Chair has her hand up. Kapua.
Thank you, Naalehu, and thank you, Becky's, for a fabulous presentation that is discouraging, but I think important for us to know and see. And this is something that I've been worried about for a while. And so I just, given all of your folks' work, I would welcome your recommendations about sort of how best to do this. I mean, to me, in my very, this is not my area, but I could see how with all of the info out there about how bad things are and things just keep getting worse. People worried about JP5, now they have to worry about PFAS, and we don't really have solutions for folks, right? It just seems to be more doom and gloom. And so what would you recommend?
Well, it's clear that communications benefited you in 2017-19. One of the things that we talked about on our staff level, I was very aware of what you were doing in 2014 and to sound alarms. And the general public, a lot of my staff members weren't. And the general public, of course, doesn't have the kind of knowledge that all of you have, that your testifiers have. So communications are really important here. We know that you are trusted. And isn't it fabulous that that didn't fall off? So you are a trusted source of information. I think there's merit to exploring some of this to try to understand a little more about what the general public understands and the role of different entities and what they understand. I know you can't do a lot of finger pointing widely, but I think there's some value to exploring that a little further. We've talked about that a little.
So, Chair, thank you. Thank you, Becky, for the very sobering report here. I appreciate it because, this is also opportunities. You see Red Hill kind of dominating the perceptions of a lot of the respondents.
Yes. Yep. It has to be, Ernie. Yes. They're playing back. They're aware of it. They're playing back that they know you're communicating about it. 83% of the folks who said they recalled seeing or hearing you talk about anything had heard about Red Hill. So very clearly it's out there.
Yeah, so clarifying roles and responsibilities, you think that would be positively received? That's kind of walking this delicate line of I know we want to avoid using this, but we've been kind of sounding the message from 2014, and unfortunately, it didn't get traction until something really bad had to happen. So it's so sad to see the people that are still suffering directly from the aftermath of that.
So Ernie, I'm not advocating a communications campaign around clarifying the roles, but I think it would help our understanding if we understood a little bit more about what the general public understands. I think that would help with the crafting of some communication messages.
No, definitely, I appreciate that. One of the things that was severely lacking until it's starting to make a gradual improvement is how the military and the regulators can actually engage with the community that was so desperate to get information, especially at the time of the incident back in 2021. So I guess trying to encourage more of that, educating and engaging with the community by the regulators and the military.
I think, communication from everyone would benefit the
Yeah.
public. Yep. Yes.
And definitely right now, we're in the midst of this process to talk about rate increases. So we are going to be engaging a lot with the community again. And I think we can use the opportunity as we update our water master plan, which is kind of what you alluded to back in 2016.
Mhm.
We actually started with the process to update the water master plan and then approach the community and how do we actually implement what was identified in the water master plan. So I think that's probably a good opportunity now, and hopefully we'll be able to add the water master plan update as a project in this year, get it started this year, and start to engage the community in that process.
Because we see the benefit of that discussion in a lot of the data, because that was the peak of positivity. Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't go necessarily out with good news. We let people know what the challenges were, what needed to be done. But we did a lot of engagement. I mean, a lot of outreach to the community and education, so that that might also help, I think, in trying to turn some of the numbers in a more upward direction.
Yeah. I was talking about positivity in terms of satisfaction with the board and perceptually. So yes, there was a reflection that you were out in the community talking and engaging, talking about planning, and that was reflected in the data. So yeah, there is evidence that can be reflected. Yep.
So kind of my thought is that we know what the problems and challenges are before us, and Red Hill created this huge crisis for our community on this island. And how, if we can actually get this thing turned into a solution and a path forward to recovery, accountability and recovery from that crisis, and the process to update our water master plan, engaging with the community, because Red Hill PFAS are just some of the things that we're wrestling with right now. But I think we're all also seeing the evidence of what's happening with global climate change and some of the scary things that are coming, and how we need to begin to prepare for that as a community and as a utility, to be able to continue to provide this vital service for our community going forward. What is the path forward into the future, in spite of all these challenges that we face? That is the message I would like to bring, a message of hope.
And the conservation message linked to Red Hill, we saw played back in the data, which speaks to other messages that you can communicate in the community engagement. So absolutely opportunities to turn this around.
Thank you. If I could just add, thank you folks so much for this data. I may actually email with further questions. There's some really interesting things in here that help to shed light on some of the challenges. Becky, I'm wondering if you can just say a little bit more about like the opposite of the halo effect. I mean, we have literally billions of media impressions, both locally and nationally, radiating in, talking about this crisis at Red Hill. Virtually every time Ernie gets up in front of a podium, he's talking about Red Hill, if not every time. I'd just be curious to hear you just talk a little bit more about what kind of net effect that can have on the audience when you bring up all the other things that are essential for us to think about.
A halo effect exists when an organization, a company, an entity has done something extremely well, very positive, and you start to see all perceptions of that company improve. They become more positive, and that halo effect then starts to impact all perceptions of the company or the entity. So it's fair to assume, I just don't know what a clever label would be for the reverse of it. But when there is a major issue, because we have seen it with other organizations, when there is a major public issue, it starts to impact perceptions of an organization in areas that you wouldn't expect and that you can't explain. So it's a negative halo, if you will. And that becomes very difficult because is there really an issue with customer service, or is it just that negative halo? I don't know.
I mean, one of the things that's really interesting to me in and around conservation is that we also have the demonstrated more than a year worth of reporting that comes in from Berry folks that we are below the moving average and the 5-year average in use. So it's clearly made its point when Ernie stood on the podium and said, okay, well, we need a 10% reduction. Everyone has to do it. And the community responded differently than, and right with the seriousness of Red Hill behind it as a reasoning. So they listened. They heard us, and they've changed some of their habit patterns, and that's proven in the monitoring data, but maybe not necessarily as much in like what the routines are, with the exception of the good point that you made about being more mindful. That seems to be something that's really stuck around. I'm curious, anecdotally, that set of slides that we saw, the breakdown by age group, where the younger ones want it on social media and the older ones, want it chiseled out on a piece of stone and dropped off on their front door. I'm curious, do you see that broadly in like a lot of the other sectors that you program? Is that something that is just like widely pretty much the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've watched it change over time, and we've never seen it as dramatically as we saw in this one.
And if I could add here, I'm sorry, Chair. If I could just add here, though, that even in that older segment, we're still seeing 20% that are receiving their information through social media. And so we're seeing just the increase, which, I'm sure many of us know anecdotally from our own Ohana, right, who uses the social media more. And so I think that we're probably going to continue to see that rise. But as Becky's made the point earlier about the need for really having continuing the multi-pronged approach that you folks have, and leveraging that trust and the credibility that you folks hold, while folks may be seeing overall perceptions of water, period. And it gets difficult because perhaps, I think one of the things Becky is getting at too is we don't know the degree to which people are able to distinguish between the responsibility that they hold to Board of Water Supply versus other agencies, and just their overall perception as it relates to water safety, water quality, water costs, et cetera, right now. And so this idea of this halo is not just sitting over this negative halo. We'll come up with we'll do some testing on better terms for it. But it's not just sitting over Board of Water Supply, it's sitting over this whole ecosystem, and Board of Water Supply is participating, unfortunately, in some of the negative impacts of that. So just sort of roundabout trying to get back to that idea as well, Chair.
Nice.
And maybe one more comment, and then I'll toss to the Vice Chair. But this is also, hypothesis-wise, that like a little bit of feedback. Like we come out and we talk about the water quality reports, and we brought up lead and PFAS and TPH and all these things because we're tracking them. But the thing we don't say very often is, and the water is safe to drink, like in a fashion that is like, and at the end of the day, we've done our job and the water is safe to drink. And is that something that feels like is needed in this kind of conversation, or what are the other things that we might be missing as we go about trying to explain what's going on here?
Well, I think the reinforcement and the water is safe to drink, I think that's really important. They trust you. We know they trust you. So for you to continue to reiterate this, and the water is safe to drink, that's important. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Kapua.
One last thing, I just, I've been grappling with what does this really mean? How far, the whole negative halo, how far does it go? And one of the things I am wondering, because I have been concerned about just what a tremendous tax of time and resources Red Hill has been on BWS. The Navy, we've talked about this before. The Navy has like 100 people working on BWS. We have Ernie and Erwin and a couple other people who are all phenomenal, but this is all time taken in addition to all of the other kuleana that they have. And so I wonder whether this also reflects the need for us to staff up and to have additional resources that can provide support in this area so we can make sure that things like call wait times, I don't know, whatever were the random things that folks had concerns about aren't being negatively affected. So thank you for this, because I think it is really important. Sobering, I think, as Ernie put it, is the best way to describe it. And this will be very helpful for us in kind of looking back and looking forward and sort of what we need to do in order to continue to make things better. So mahalo to both of you.
Yeah, I just want to echo that too. Mahalo, Becky and Becky. This is sobering, and I think it points to also challenging that we need to work on these areas. It looks clear like the way people receive information, it is evolving as time moves on. So as an agency, we need to evolve to adjust to different ways that people communicate or receive their information. It looks like too, I think there's opportunities to maybe create more ways that people can interact with the Board of Water Supply electronically or digitally, as opposed to maybe just a person talking to another person on the telephone.
Absolutely.
I can see it now. Ernie Lau went from his own hashtag to TikTok star.
No. It's better to see that, that red tie that said can retire. But
any other comments or questions, you folks?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I think the good news is that the public still trusts the Board of Water for information, right? So I think that's the one slide that I've just been staring at, because that's still, out of all the graphs, is actually uptrending, which is great. But I think no one likes bad news in the last 2 years, so we can't really do much about that. But I think, at least in my opinion, this solidifies the need to relook at the water master plan, because then, the dust isn't settled with Red Hill, obviously, but I think beginning to have a discussion with the public to share information, and to communicate with them, now that this has happened, how has this changed the future of how we look at water security in Hawaii?
Yeah.
I think that would start to turn the tide possibly on why we've been downtrending, because we still hold, we still maintain the public's trust in just, in providing accurate information. So yeah, that's great. I was kind of shocked that there was a review of there's a slide with like Board of Water employees. I thought that was like an internal survey. But it's not. So I'll just pass on that. But yeah, I think the only good news, yeah, they still trust the Board of Water, and now it's our job to establish a pathway forward with the public, now that the more information is known about Red Hill and possibly other contaminants.
And I completely agree. I think the reality is also, the issue of long-term water security, like you said, in light of all the different challenges, and some of the biggest challenges are with climate change, and preparing ourselves for that future. But seeing what's happening on the continent or around the world it's actually a little scary. But what will the future generations, your generations, John, have to contend with, and what do we leave in our decisions today for the folks that come tomorrow?
I have a quick question. On your communication from the BWS age segments and so forth. You have TV, social media and so forth. Just another clarification on the TV portion, is that, in your opinion, is that from public service announcements or just the news coverage? Do you get any feel for that?
It's probably predominantly from news coverage. And I don't know about public service announcements. Could be from advertising. We really can't discern one from another in the TV mention, but usually it's coming from news.
Just by virtue of the distribution of viewers too, yeah. The news watching is so incredibly high that you're probably gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's been excellent coverage on the Red Hill issue.
Right.
Especially for some of the stations, that we work with, and really appreciate their good coverage, and also the print media and digital media too.
We just have all of them add at the end, and the water is safe to drink.
Yeah.
And just in support of what you folks are all saying about TV coverage, even if we look at the younger segment, they're still identifying TV as their number 2 source right behind social media. And really it's 36 and 35%. So they're pretty much on par with one another. Whereas you get into the middle range segments and the TV actually goes down slightly.
Just curious, because the TV is pretty high, like you said, it's the total admission 36 to 35, between that and social media, that's pretty damn good. I think nowadays with social media kind of the predominant way of communication for a lot of folks. Thank you. That's all I have.
Chair, could I ask our head of our communications office to share her thoughts too about this? Kathy?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. Overall, I think some of the numbers are concerning. I think Red Hill, my personal opinion is the news about Red Hill really did have, I think, an overall negative halo effect on a lot of things. People can't help themselves. And I know in my talking, when I go out to the public, and I go to a lot of neighborhood board meetings, even though people love us and think we're doing the right thing, it's just Red Hill has them wringing their hands and they're very concerned. And it's not, to me, it was not unexpected that they would feel that the water quality and the water safety was being impacted, despite everything we know we do, and we know we have the best water. We know the team does a terrific job. People are afraid. They're scared. People are scared. We heard it today. We hear it at every board meeting from Jamie and Meredith and Susan. People are scared. So it's to be expected that some of that negative effect would impact all of our messaging. Really interested in the segmentation of how people are getting their media. Didn't surprise me at all. And frankly, if you see commercials on TV, they're always sending you to their social media and website these days. So that linkage between TV and social media, I think, is pretty strong. And we're seeing it in our own customers. We're now at 41% paperless, and over 40% now use the online portal exclusively. So we're seeing it, and Ernie and Jennifer and I have been having a number of conversations on how we're going to reach out to people and things like that. So very things, we're already starting those conversations. So again, thank you to Becky Soon and Becky Ward for all their hard work. We learn something every 2 years. And I think the water master plan, you're absolutely right. I think we'll see an uptick once we go out and show people how we're using this plan to help us move forward. I think that will be impactful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Chair, can I offer a thought at the risk of throwing
Absolutely.
a wrench in? Perhaps turning this negative halo effect into the Pilina effect, and leaning in on the relationships and knowing that continuing to build the community engagement, the community communications, perhaps that can take all of that energy and push it towards Pilina. For those that aren't ma'a to that word, Pilina being just relationships. So just throwing the idea out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. plenty of opportunities to interact with the community, so I think it's just making sure that we're pointed in the right direction with some of those conversations, even though they're hard conversations to have, and some of them are cased in, really tough stuff, but, yeah, we definitely have an opportunity to change the hearts and minds. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Malama.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Okay, thank you to the two Beckys and Word Research. Really appreciate the information. Going on to item number 5. Next item for information is the 2023 annual Halavas Xeriscape Garden Unthirsty Plant Sale. And Chair recognizes Sherry Mikami. Oh,
Good afternoon,
information.
Board Chair and members of the board. I'm Sherry Mikami from the Board of Water Supply Communications Office. I'm here with the announcement and invitation to our 2023 annual Halavas Xeriscape Garden Unthirsty Plant Sale. After a 3-year break, we're very excited. During COVID, we took a break and we're back open and we're able to hold our event on Saturday, August 5th from 9 to 3. Xeriscaping is a very important way to help reduce outdoor water use and conserve our precious water resources. This event is going to be in person, free admission, free parking, free shuttles on Ibina Street, featuring local Xer plant vendors, information booths. You can even take home a bag of compost, and we hope you're able to, join us. And Ernie invites you also to help him fill some bags of compost. If you are able to attend, please let us know, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Numbers, questions?
That's right around the corner.
Yes.
The date again was?
Saturday, August 5th from 9 to 3. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you,
Sherry.
Sherry.
Thank you so much. Okay, next item for information. Number 6 is the status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Our good friend, Mr. Barry Rusawa. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. Very informed today. Yeah, so we have 4 aquifer index stations in low groundwater condition. As of June, Kaimuki, Pearl City, Honolulu, and Wailua are in caution. Pumpage for the month was 136 million gallons per day. That's still pretty low for June. From the amount of rainfall we had up to this point, 88% of normal in June, with a 5-month moving average of 117%. So anytime the moving average is above normal, above 100%, or I guess we start to still see elevated water levels. However, the National Weather Service is forecasting a below normal rainfall for the year going forward because of moderate to strong El Nino. Through the winter, probably early spring is what they're forecasting. But the heads are still pretty relatively stable this time, which is unusual. And then if you could scroll, or if I can scroll, you can, yeah, to the bottom, the last page, please. And just the rainfall, scroll up a little. Yeah, so that's the rainfall that we've been having. The red line is the index for the normal. So when that 5-month moving average, a squiggly line, is above the red line, we usually have above normal rainfall. And then that affects the pumpage, because if it's raining, people are not using, they're not irrigating. So if you scroll down, so the blue line is this year, and it's been below the 5-month moving average, well below the last year as well. But as we get into the late summer, the next couple of months, we expect it to rise up there. But that's the reason why. So I've been lucky we having an above rainfall year. So with that, that's my report.
Any questions for?
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. Next item for information, actually, this is the final item for information. This is the water main repair report for June 2023 with Chair recognizes Jason Nakaido. Hello, Jason.
Thank you, Board Chair and board members. The following is the water main repair report for June. For June was the last year of the fiscal year. There were 29 main breaks for a total of 353 for the fiscal year. That was lower than last year and consistent with the previous years before that. And next slide. This is a list of the 29 main breaks in June. We had a couple larger diameter main breaks. One on Kapahulu Ave under the freeway and another in Waikiki on Kuhio Ave. Next slide. The leak detection team investigated 31 points of interest, bringing their total for 285 for the year. And they found 57 leaks in June for 428 for the year. I want to mention that for the entire fiscal year, they found 29 leaks on main lines, which would have affected the number of main breaks. Okay. Also, our leak detection team just started a new contract with Astera, which is the satellite leak detection capability that we have, and we recently got new points of interest to investigate through that contract. Okay, that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Questions, anyone?
Chair, there, just a reminder, there was testimony submitted.
I was gonna bring it up. We're gonna need your help with some of the questions that came in with David Tupper.
Okay.
So it's, I think a lot of it is like what you've covered in the past in terms of like how you do what you do and just some of the methods, but. Yeah, we'll be providing a written answer to the dozen or so questions with Mr. Tupper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah, real quick, well, the whole island, what area has produced the most leaks detection? That you found most of the leaks?
Probably the metro area would have the most.
That's pretty big metro. I mean, any specific?
Ooh, not off the top of my
Not
head.
okay.
It's because most of the services,
Yeah.
the older pipes are concentrated.
Yeah, that's understandable. I'm just curious on what areas is more. Just
areas.
Curiosity.
Yeah, thank you. The biggest system is this, I mean, the most pipelines are in this metro.
I would figure downtown probably the biggest.
You got some really old pipe.
Yeah, some old pipage down there.
Any other questions? All right, it gives me great pleasure to say that this brings us to the end of our regular meeting. We do not have executive session today, but there's no other business. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
Move.
Thank you, Max. Seconded by John. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Any abstention? Thank you very much. Closes our meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.